Hi, this is Ms. Mack, and today we're going to demo the case. This is another easy project for you to do. We're going to primarily use one tool, and that is going to be the rectangle tool. So let's go to Inventor, and we're going to create a new part. We're going to use this in inch. So we're here, we're in Inventor, we're in our part. We're going to start a new 2D sketch on the XY plane. And if we look at our dimension, we're going to sketch a rectangle that is 6 by 9. 3, 6, 9. So we're going to start by using our 2-point rectangle. And we're going to start at our point of origin. And we know that because our cursor is going to change a color. It's going to change to green. Okay, so we need this to be 9 inches wide by 6 inches tall. Okay. Now this is our first sketch. This is this outer rectangle on this shape. But we also need to extrude it. So this notice or notification tells us that the inside, this depth here is 0.5 inches or 0.5 inch. So we're going to extrude this whole rectangle 1 inch. Let's go back to Inventor. We finished our sketch. We're going to come to extrude. And because there is only one sketch on the screen, it's the only thing that's going to extrude. We're going to extrude it 1 inch. We're going to turn this around because we're going to do another sketch. So if you look at this, this is really just a series of rectangles. So now we're going to put in this second rectangle. Even though it doesn't give us dimensions, we're going to use dimensions to center it. So we're going to come back. We're going to start a new 2D sketch, but I'm going to touch the front face of the sketch that we just made. I'm going to start another 2-point rectangle, and I'm just going to roughly eyeball this shape. Okay, so now that I have my rectangle, I'm going to use the dimension to make sure that this is centered. And I'm going to dimension all around. Oh, hit dimension. I'm going to hit my top line and the top line in my smaller rectangle, and I'm going to make that 0.5. And I'm going to use this dimension all around this rectangle so that it looks like my picture. You're going to hear me say a lot that you want to make your sketches look like the picture that they give you. It's a good way for you to check to make sure that your sketch, everything that you need in your sketch is there. It's also a good way for you to check if you're missing something. Okay, so now that we have our rectangle, it's a dimension 1/2 inch all the way around. We're going to finish this sketch. We're going to come to extrude. We're going to click the rectangle that we just created, but instead of joining it, we're going to cut it, and we're going to cut it 0.5. So we can come in here and change that distance to 0.5. And a good rule is to kind of turn your part to see that it's actually going in the right direction. Okay, so now we've made the first part of the case. It's actually the case itself. The second part that we're going to make is this handle. So this handle is going to be made a lot like the case itself. We're going to use rectangles, and we're going to use rectangles to cut out the handle. So when I look at this rectangle that we're going to create, it's giving us some dimensions. So I know that this outer rectangle, the larger rectangle, is going to be 3 inches by 1 inch. Now, when we create this rectangle, we want to start it where it touches the case. So let's come back to Inventor. We're going to start another 2D sketch on the outer rectangle. We're going to come with our 2-point rectangle, and I'm going to zoom in. Notice When my cursor hits the line, it changes a color. So we need this to be 3 inches wide and 1 inch tall. Okay. So now that we have our rectangle here, we need to center it. So we're going to use our dimension tool, and we're going to look at the outside edge of the case and the outside edge of this rectangle. And we need this distance to be 3 inches. And so now this is centered, and we're going to finish the sketch. Okay, so now that we finished the sketch, let's look at the information here. So if you look at the picture, you can see that this handle does not go all the way to the base of the case. So we're going to make this extrusion 0.5. So we finished the sketch. We're going to click extrude. And again, it's the only sketch that we have, the new sketch. What we want to do is change the direction. If you look here, if we were to create this sketch, that handle will be floating above the case, and we want it to go into the case. So we're going to change the direction. Notice when I change the direction, the extrusion goes inside or downward toward the case. And by default, it's going to leave the last dimension that we had in here. So it's going to be 0.5. And we're going to click OK. So we're almost done. We have this rectangular case and this beginning part of a handle. So if we were to come back, we have this last part, this cutout. We know this cutout here is going to be 2 inches wide. And if the total distance for our outer rectangle is 1 inch, then the height for the second rectangle is only going to be 0.5 inches. And they tell us that here with this dimension. So we're going to make another rectangle that's 2 inches wide and 0.5 inches tall. So again, we want to make sure we're going to start a new 2D sketch, but on the rectangle that we just created. We're going to come here to a 2-point rectangle. We're going to touch this line, and we know we need this 2 inches by 0.5. Okay, so that rectangle looks good. We need to now center it, and it's going to be 0.5 inches all around. So let's go back in and use our dimension tool. Now notice I created my second rectangle on the same line that I started the larger rectangle. So we're going to come here to dimension, and now we're only going to dimension 3 sides. We need this to be 0.5. And we need this bottom to be 0.5. By default, this should also be 0.5, but let's go ahead and put a dimension. It is there. Now notice what will happen if I try to dimension it. It's going to say it's overly constrained. The reason is the computer can do some basic math. So it knows that if the width of this larger rectangle is 3 and the smaller rectangle is 2, and I dimension one side to 0.5, which is a 1/2 inch. If I have a 1/2 inch on both sides, that's 1 inch, plus the 2 inches of the smaller rectangle, it adds up to 3 inches. And so the computer already knows that, so it won't let you put that extra dimension in. So now we're going to finish the sketch. We're going to come to extrude. We need to select the rectangle that we just created, and we want to cut it. But we want to change the distance to all. And the reason we're going to do that is if we were to ever change the dimensions of the case, we want the handle or the cutout to always go all the way through. We're going to select OK. Hit front. We can use our view cube to check everything. And if we hit home, we're going to get a nice view of our case. So this is the case, very basic. It's literally using 4 separate rectangles and your dimension tool. Hope you enjoyed this video.